The arrival, the shuttle looked pathetically small against the massive hull of the Valdorian flagship. Commander Thex watched through the observation deck as the tiny human craft approached their mighty vessel, the Domination's Edge. At 15 kilometers long and bristling with enough firepower to crack planets, the ship was a monument to Valdorian superiority. The approaching shuttle wouldn't have made a decent escape pod for their smallest fighters. This is what they send us. Admiral Krex laughed, his scaled hide gleaming under the bridge's harsh lights. One tiny ship with a single occupant? The humans must be even more primitive than our intelligence suggested. Emperor Kethrin rose from his command throne, all 12 feet of his imposing frame casting shadows across the bridge. His ceremonial armor, forged from the bones of conquered species, clinked softly as he moved. 200 worlds had fallen before the might of the Valdorian Empire, each one adding to the Emperor's collection of trophies that decorated the bridge walls. Perhaps they're surrendering already, suggested War Master Vox, his forearms flexing with anticipation. It would save us the trouble of glassing their pathetic colonies. The shuttle docked with barely a whisper against the massive ship's hull. Security feeds showed a single figure emerging from the craft. She was small even by human standards, maybe 5.5 feet tall, wearing a simple gray jumpsuit that looked more like maintenance clothing than diplomatic attire. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and she carried no visible weapons or even a briefcase. That's their negotiator. Commander Thex's voice cracked with disbelief. She looks like a maintenance worker. Maya Rodriguez stepped into the docking bay and took a moment to look around. The space was vast enough to hold a small city, with arched ceilings that disappeared into shadows above. Valdorian guards, each one towering over her like armored giants, flanked the pathway leading deeper into the ship. Their weapons could have vaporized her instantly, but they seemed almost bored by her presence. "Welcome aboard the Domination's Edge, human," growled Captain Zeth, his voice echoing through the bay. "You will follow the designated path to the throne room. Any deviation will result in immediate termination." Maya nodded politely. "Thank you for the warm welcome. I have to say, this is quite an impressive ship. The hull design alone must require incredible engineering. How many people does it take to maintain something this size?" The question caught Captain Zeth off guard. He had expected fear, defiance, or perhaps desperate pleading. He had not expected technical curiosity from someone who was about to face the most powerful emperor in the galaxy. "That information is classified," he replied stiffly. "Of course," Maya said with a smile. "I'm just fascinated by the logistics. I'm an engineer by training, so I can't help but wonder about things like power distribution, life support systems, structural integrity under acceleration. The fusion signatures alone must be massive." As they walked through the ship's corridors, Maya continued her stream of seemingly innocent observations. She commented on the lighting efficiency, asked about the gravity generators, and marveled at the organic-looking technology that seemed to grow from the walls like metallic coral. "Your biointegration is remarkable," she said to one of the guards. "The way your armor interfaces directly with your nervous system must give you incredible response times. What's the latency between thought and action?" "Milliseconds." The guard grunted something that might have been confirmation, clearly uncomfortable with the humans' casual analysis of their military technology. Emperor Kethrin waited in the throne room, a cathedral-sized space designed to intimidate. The walls rose in spiraling arches covered with the preserved remains of defeated enemies. Weapons from conquered worlds hung like trophies, and the floor was inlaid with precious metals mined from enslaved planets. At the center of it all sat the throne of Dominion, carved from a single massive crystal and elevated on a platform that required visitors to look up at their emperor. The massive doors opened with a hydraulic hiss, and Maya walked in alone. She paused just inside the entrance, taking in the scope of the room with the same appreciative expression she might have worn in a museum. Her eyes lingered on the weapons displays, the architectural details, and the various technological systems visible throughout the space. "Impressive," she said genuinely. "The acoustics alone must have taken years to perfect." and the power requirements for a room this size on a ship this large. She trailed off, apparently lost in thought. Silence. Emperor Catherine's voice boomed across the chamber, amplified by the room's design to create an almost physical pressure wave. You stand before the ruler of 200 worlds, the conqueror of 1,000 species, the undisputed master of this sector of space. You will show proper respect or face the consequences. Maya looked up at him without flinching. Your reputation definitely precedes you, Emperor Catherine. The stories about your military capabilities are quite impressive. Though I have to ask, how do you coordinate forces across such a vast territory? The communication delays alone must create fascinating logistical challenges. The Emperor's reptilian features twisted in confusion. This was not how these meetings typically went. Usually, representatives of inferior species either cowered in terror or made desperate attempts at bravado. They did not ask technical questions about fleet management. You dare to question the efficiency of the Valdorian Empire? War Master Vox stepped forward, his massive frame radiating menace. We have perfected warfare, while your species was still learning to make fire. Oh, I'm not questioning anything, Maya replied calmly. I'm just trying to understand the scope of what we're dealing with. Your empire spans, roughly 8,000 light-years? With conventional faster-than-light communication, that's still significant lag time for coordinated operations. You must have developed some fascinating solutions. Admiral Krex laughed harshly. Solutions? We solve problems with overwhelming force, human. When a world defies us, we demonstrate the futility of resistance. When a species refuses to submit, we show them the consequences of pride. Maya nodded thoughtfully. Shock and awe tactics. Very effective against most opponents, I imagine. But resource-intensive, surely? The fuel costs alone for moving fleets, that size must be enormous. And maintaining morale across such distances? She paused. How do you handle supply lines in contested space? Commander Thex exchanged glances with his fellow officers. The human was asking questions that suggested a deeper understanding of military logistics than any primitive species should possess. Her queries were too specific, too focused on operational vulnerabilities. Why do you ask these questions? Emperor Catherine demanded, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. What purpose do they serve? Maya's expression remained pleasantly curious. I'm trying to understand how we might coexist peacefully. Humanity is new to this part of the galaxy, and we're naturally curious about how established powers operate. Your empire is clearly successful, so there must be lessons we can learn. Coexist. War Master Vox's laughter was like grinding stone. There is no coexistence with the Valdorian Empire. There is only submission or annihilation. Your species will provide tribute, labor, and resources, or we will take them from your corpses. I see, Maya said quietly. And what would that tribute look like specifically? Emperor Catherine leaned forward on his throne. Half your population as workers, all your military assets, complete access to your industrial capacity. Your species will serve, or it will perish. Maya was quiet for a long moment, her hands clasped behind her back as she appeared to consider the Emperor's demands. The throne room fell silent except for the distant hum of the ship's massive engines and the occasional mechanical sound from the various systems maintaining the vast space. Those are certainly comprehensive terms, she finally said. I can see why so many species have chosen to comply rather than resist. The alternative must seem impossible to overcome. Impossible is correct, Admiral Krex confirmed with satisfaction. No species in galactic history has successfully resisted the Valdorian Empire once we have decided to conquer them. Your choice is simple. Submit willingly and retain some dignity, or be crushed and lose everything. Maya walked closer to the throne, her footsteps echoing in the vast chamber. The guards tensed, hands moving to weapons, but she moved with such casual confidence that none of them felt immediately threatened. Can I ask you something about your guards' equipment? She said, apparently changing the subject entirely. Those energy weapons they carry are fascinating. Plasma-based from the look of the discharge chambers. The power coupling must be incredible to generate that kind of focused energy output. Captain Zeth stepped forward protectively. You will not approach the Emperor any closer. Human? Of course not. Maya agreed readily. I was just admiring the craftsmanship. The weapon design is particularly elegant, though I notice something interesting about the power regulation system. Before anyone could react, Maya reached out and touched a specific point on Captain Zeth's weapon. There was a brief spark, and the weapon's charge indicators immediately went dark. The captain stared at his suddenly inert weapon in shock. The secondary power coupling, Maya explained conversationally, it's exposed just enough to be vulnerable to electromagnetic discharge. Probably not noticeable under normal circumstances, but if you know exactly where to apply pressure. She demonstrated again on another guard's weapon, producing the same result. How did you know that? War Master Vox demanded, his own weapon now trained on the human. Maya shrugged. Pattern recognition. Human engineers tend to notice things like structural weak points and system vulnerabilities. It's how we solve problems when we can't just overwhelm them with superior force. Emperor Kethrin's eyes narrowed. You are no mere negotiator. Actually, I am exactly what I appear to be, Maya replied. I'm Maya Rodriguez, formerly a mining engineer on Kepler Station, currently serving as humanity's representative in this sector. I fix things that are broken and find solutions to impossible problems. It's what humans do. And what solution do you propose for the problem of your species' impending conquest? The Emperor asked. Maya smiled, and for the first time since entering the throne room, there was something unsettling about her expression. Well, that depends on whether you're willing to reconsider your approach to diplomacy. We do not negotiate with inferior species, War Master Vox declared. That's unfortunate, Maya said softly, because I was really hoping we could resolve this peacefully. She glanced at the timepiece on her wrist, though I should mention that my government anticipated this might be your position, and Emperor Kethrin prompted that Maya's smile widened, and they asked me to deliver a message if negotiations failed. The throne room fell silent again, but this time the silence had a different quality. Something in the human's tone suggested that the conversation was about to take a very different direction. What message? The Emperor asked, though his voice carried a note of uncertainty that had not been there before. Maya looked directly at him, her calm demeanor never wavering. The message is simple, Your Majesty. You chose to threaten humanity with slavery and genocide. What happens next isn't negotiation anymore. Before anyone could respond, the ship's emergency lighting activated, bathing the throne room in pulsing red illumination. Somewhere in the distance, alarms began to sound. What have you done? Emperor Kethrin roared, rising for his throne. Maya checked her timepiece again. Me? Nothing at all. But humanity as a whole. She looked up at the Emperor with eyes that held no fear whatsoever. We've been busy. The demonstration, the emergency alarms continued their harsh wailing as reports flooded into the throne room. Emperor Kethrin's communication officers scrambled at their stations, their scaled faces reflecting the red emergency lighting as they tried to make sense of the incoming data. Your Majesty, called Communications Officer Drac, his voice strained with disbelief. We're receiving reports from across the sector. Multiple ships are experiencing simultaneous system malfunctions. Maya remained perfectly still in the center of the throne room, her hands still clasped behind her back, as if she were simply waiting for the meeting to continue. The guards had their weapons trained on her, though several were frantically checking their power couplings after her earlier demonstration. Malfunctions. War Master Vox stepped toward the communication station. What kind of malfunctions? Navigation systems failing, weapon targeting offline, life support fluctuations, Drac reported rapidly. The Eternal Conquest reports that their engines shut down completely 17 minutes ago. The Iron Dominion has lost all communications with their fighter squadrons. Emperor Catherine's reptilian eyes fixed on Maya. This is your doing. Maya tilted her head thoughtfully. Is it? I've been standing here talking with you this entire time. When would I have had the opportunity to sabotage your fleet? Before you arrived, Admiral Krex accused, your ship must have deployed some kind of weapon system. My ship? Maya gestured toward the docking bay. You scanned it thoroughly before allowing me to board. Did you find any weapons? Any technology you didn't recognize? Commander Thex had indeed overseen the scanning process personally. The human shuttle had contained nothing but basic life, support systems, a simple fusion drive, and what appeared to be standard communication equipment. No weapons, no suspicious technology, nothing that could threaten a Valdorian vessel. Then how? War Master Vox demanded. Maya walked slowly toward one of the wall displays showing the ship's internal systems. The guards tracked her movement, but didn't interfere when she stopped a respectful distance away. Can I show you something interesting about your ship's design? You will not touch anything, Captain Zeth warned, his backup weapon now charged and ready. I don't need to touch anything, Maya replied. Just observe. Look at your internal network architecture. She pointed toward the display without making contact. It's actually quite elegant. Organic integration with digital systems, self-repairing conduits, adaptive protocols that learn from usage patterns. Very sophisticated. Emperor Catherine watched her carefully. Your point? Well, adaptive systems are incredibly powerful, Maya continued conversationally. They learn, they evolve, they optimize themselves based on new data. But that same adaptability can be a vulnerability if someone introduces the right kind of information into the system. The realization hit Admiral Krex first. The communication signals. When your shuttle requested permission to dock, when you transmitted your diplomatic credentials, Maya nodded approvingly. Very good. Yes, every standard diplomatic communication protocol includes data packets for translation matrices, cultural context files, biographical information. All perfectly legitimate data that any receiving system would automatically process and integrate. But you embedded something else, War Master Vox said slowly. Not embedded exactly, Maya corrected. More like, introduce some new friends to your network. You see, humans have been dealing with adaptive systems for a long time. We've learned that the best way to understand a complex system isn't to break it from the outside. It's to become part of it. The throne room's main display flickered, and suddenly new information began appearing. Ship schematics, fleet positions, communication logs, tactical assessments. The Valdorian officers watched in horror as their most classified data scrolled across the screens. Impossible, breathed Communications Officer Drac. Our security protocols are impenetrable. Your security protocols are designed to keep out hostile intrusions, Maya explained patiently. They're not designed to recognize when the system itself has been convinced to share information voluntarily. That's the difference between breaking down a door and being invited inside. Emperor Catherine's massive form trembled with rage. You infected our ships with some kind of virus. Not a virus, Maya said. Think of it more like ambassadors. Tiny digital entities designed to facilitate communication and understanding between different technological systems. They're actually quite helpful once they get settled in. As if to demonstrate her point, the ship's internal lights shifted from emergency red to a softer, more natural white. The alarm sounds faded to a gentle chime, and several system displays that had been malfunctioning suddenly returned to normal operation. See, Maya gestured toward the improved lighting. They're already making improvements. Your previous illumination was actually quite inefficient. This configuration provides better visibility while using 30% less power. War Master Vox raised his weapon toward Maya. Enough games. Reverse what you've done immediately or face the consequences. Maya looked at the massive alien with genuine curiosity. What consequences would those be? You could certainly kill me, but that wouldn't help your situation. The digital ambassadors don't require my continued existence to function. In fact, terminating me might convince them that you're genuinely hostile, which could complicate things considerably. What do you mean, complicate things? Admiral Krex asked with growing dread. Well, right now, they're just gathering information and making minor efficiency improvements, Maya explained. But if they determine that their host systems are under threat, they might decide to take more aggressive protective measures. They're quite resourceful when properly motivated. As if summoned by her words, a new series of reports began flooding the communication channels. Commander Thex listened to his earpiece with growing alarm before turning to the Emperor. Your Majesty, the destroyer's Pride reports that their weapon systems have locked onto their own escort vessels. The Victorious Thunder says their navigation system is plotting a course directly into the nearest star, and the orbital platforms around Volder Prime. He paused, his voice cracking. They're targeting the planet's surface. Maya nodded sympathetically. That does sound like aggressive protective measures. The ambassadors probably interpreted your hostile actions toward me as an indication that the Valdorian Empire represents a threat to peaceful communication. They're quite protective of diplomatic processes. Emperor Kethrin's eyes widened with the full scope of what was happening. You're holding our entire fleet hostage. Not me, Maya corrected gently. I'm just a mining engineer who happened to be available for diplomatic duty. But humanity as a whole has been preparing for this possibility ever since we learned about the Valdorian Empire's expansion patterns. She began walking again, this time toward the Emperor's throne. The guards raised their weapons, but Maya's movements remained casual and unthreatening. You see, when humans encounter a problem we can't solve through direct confrontation, we tend to get creative. We study the problem, we learn everything we can about it, and then we find ways to turn its own strengths against it. Our strengths? War Master Vox demanded. Your adaptive technology, your interconnected fleet networks, your reliance on automated systems for coordination across vast distances. Maya listed all incredibly impressive achievements, all absolutely necessary for managing an empire of her scope, and all completely dependent on trust between different system components. Maya stopped at the base of the throne platform, looking up at Emperor Kethrin. The thing about trust is that once it's established, it's very hard to detect when it's been redirected. Communications Officer Drac was receiving a steady stream of increasingly desperate reports. Your Majesty, it's not just our ships. We're getting signals from Valdorian installations throughout the Empire. Mining facilities, orbital stations, planetary defense networks. They're all reporting similar system anomalies. Throughout the Empire, Admiral Krex repeated faintly, "That's impossible. How could a single shuttle carry enough of these digital entities to affect thousands of installations across hundreds of light years?" Maya smiled. It couldn't. But here's the thing about adaptive systems that learn from each other. They share information. They communicate. They replicate successful adaptations throughout the network. The full implications hit Emperor Kethrin like a physical blow. You didn't just target our ship. You targeted our entire technological infrastructure. We offered an alternative, Maya corrected. A chance for our species to coexist peacefully, to learn from each other, to build something better together. You chose to respond with threats of slavery and genocide. War Master Vox stepped forward aggressively. You dare to threaten the Valdorian Empire? I'm not threatening anyone, Maya replied calmly. I'm explaining the natural consequences of your choices. Humans are adaptable, War Master. When faced with an impossible situation, we find ways to make it possible. When confronted with superior force, we develop superior strategy. The throne room's displays now showed a real-time map of Valdorian space. Red indicators marked ships and installations experiencing system complications. As they watched, more and more locations shifted from green to red in a spreading wave across the Empire's territory. This is an act of war, Emperor Kethrin growled. No, Maya said softly. This is what war looks like when humans are involved. We don't fight the way you expect us to fight. We don't play by the rules that worked against every other species you've conquered. She gestured toward the spreading red indicators on the display. Every world you've conquered learned to fight you the way you expected to be fought. Ship against ship, weapon against weapon, strength against strength. They tried to beat you at your own game. Maya's voice carried a note of something that might have been pity. Humans learned long ago that when you can't win the game being played, you change the rules. Communications. Officer Drac looked up from his station with barely controlled panic. Your Majesty, we're receiving a priority transmission from the Valdorian High Command. Fleet Admiral Torx is requesting immediate instructions. Apparently, the entire third battle group has lost navigational control and is currently on a collision course with each other. How long? Emperor Kethrin asked grimly. At current speeds, approximately 6 hours until impact, Drac replied. Maya checked her timepiece. That should be plenty of time to resolve this situation peacefully. The digital ambassadors are actually quite reasonable once you understand their motivations. What do they want? Admiral Krex demanded. The same thing I wanted when I walked through those doors, Maya replied. A negotiated settlement that allows both our species to coexist peacefully. The difference is that now you understand the alternative. War Master Vox looked around the throne room at his fellow officers, all of whom were staring at displays showing their empire in unprecedented chaos. You would destroy everything we've built? Maya shook her head. Destruction isn't the goal. Transformation is. Every ship that's currently experiencing difficulties can be restored to full function. Every installation that's gone offline can be brought back online. Every system that's been compromised can be repaired. She paused, letting the implications sink in, but only if we can reach an understanding about how our species will interact going forward. Emperor Kethrin's massive hands gripped the arms of his throne. What are your terms? The same terms I came here to negotiate, Maya replied. Mutual recognition of territorial boundaries, cessation of expansion into human space, release of enslaved species within your empire. In exchange, humanity will provide technical assistance in resolving the current system complications and establishing new communication protocols between our peoples. And if we refuse... Maya's expression grew serious. Then the digital ambassadors will conclude that peaceful coexistence is impossible. They'll shift from protective measures to active threat elimination. Every ship, every station, every installation in the Valdorian Empire will be permanently disabled. The throne room fell silent except for the soft hum of systems and the continued stream of reports from across the Empire. Emperor Kethrin stared at the small human who had somehow brought the most powerful military force in the galaxy to its knees without firing a single shot. How long do we have to decide? He asked finally. Maya consulted her timepiece once more. The digital ambassadors are programmed to wait for a response until the immediate threat to fleet safety becomes critical. Based on current trajectories and system failures, I'd estimate about 4 hours. She looked up at the Emperor with those calm, fearless eyes. I really do hope we can reach an agreement, Your Majesty. Humans prefer cooperation to conflict whenever possible, but we're very good at both. The new Galaxy 4 hours. The number hung in the air of the throne room like a countdown to extinction. Emperor Kethrin paced before his crystal throne, his massive frame casting shifting shadows under the normalized lighting that Maya's digital ambassadors had provided. Every few minutes, new reports arrived detailing the systematic paralysis of the Valdorian Empire's military might. The 7th Fleet is completely dead in space, Communications Officer Drac reported, his voice hoarse from hours of relaying increasingly dire news. Life support is functioning, but engines, weapons, and navigation are all offline. Fleet Admiral Corvin is requesting evacuation shuttles. Maya sat on the steps leading to the throne platform, having been offered no other seating in the chamber designed to intimidate rather than accommodate. She appeared completely relaxed, occasionally checking her timepiece, but otherwise seeming content to wait for the Valdorians to reach their decision. Tell me something human. Emperor Catherine said, stopping his pacing to face her directly. How long have you been planning this? Maya considered the question thoughtfully. In terms of this specific operation, about 8 months. But the underlying technology and strategy, humans have been developing these capabilities since we first learned about galactic civilization. 8 months, War Master Vox repeated bitterly. 8 months to bring down an empire that has stood for millennia. Well, you have to understand that we had advantages, Maya said fairly. First, you never tried to hide your expansion patterns or military capabilities. Your empire is built on intimidation, which requires making your strength visible to potential enemies. That made it relatively easy to study your systems and identify vulnerabilities. Admiral Krex leaned against the console, looking older than his considerable years. What other advantages? Humans work differently than most species, Maya explained. When we encounter a problem, we don't just try to solve it individually. We share information, collaborate across vast networks, and build solutions collectively. Your intelligence services were probably tracking individual human activities, but they wouldn't have been able to detect the coordination happening across our entire species. She gestured toward the displays, still showing the Empire's paralyzed fleets. Every human engineer, programmer, systems analyst, and technician who learned about the Valdorian Empire contributed something to this project. A better understanding of your technology, an improved infiltration protocol, a more elegant way to integrate with your systems. We built the solution together. Commander Thex looked up from his own reports. Your Majesty, the situation is accelerating. The third battle group's collision course has shortened to 3 hours and 47 minutes. The orbital defense platforms around Valder Prime are now actively targeting civilian shipping lanes. Emperor Catherine's reptilian features twisted with frustration and something that might have been fear. Why civilians? We understand military targets, but why threaten innocent populations? Maya's expression grew serious. Because the digital ambassadors are designed to minimize long-term casualties by preventing prolonged conflict. They're programmed to understand that the quickest way to end a war is to make it impossible for either side to continue fighting by threatening our people, by removing your capacity to wage war while demonstrating the consequences of aggression. Maya corrected. Right now, those orbital platforms are targeting empty shipping lanes and decommissioned satellites. But if the threat level escalates, they'll expand their targeting parameters to include active military installations, then strategic resources, then command and control centers. War Master Vox slammed his fist against the nearest wall. This is madness. You're holding our entire civilization hostage. No, Maya said quietly. We're offering your civilization a choice. Continue down the path of conquest and expansion, and face the consequences of that choice. Or adapt to a new reality where cooperation is more valuable than domination. She stood up, brushing dust from her jumpsuit. The thing is, War Master, your empire was always vulnerable to this kind of approach. You built everything around the assumption that superior force would always triumph over inferior technology. But humans learned long ago that intelligence and cooperation can overcome almost any advantage in raw power. Emperor Catherine stopped pacing and faced Maya directly. You speak of cooperation, but what you've done here is conquest. You've invaded our systems, compromised our security, and threatened our people. How is this different from what you accuse us of doing? Maya nodded acknowledgement. That's a fair question. The difference is in the objective. The Valdorian Empire conquers species to exploit them. You take their resources, enslave their populations, and destroy their cultures. Humans are offering you a chance to survive and even thrive in a new kind of galactic community. What kind of community? Admiral Krex asked. One based on mutual benefit rather than dominance, Maya replied. Your species has incredible technological capabilities, vast experience in space travel and planetary management, and organizational skills that most civilizations can only dream of. Instead of using those abilities to conquer and control, imagine what you could accomplish as partners in exploration, research, and development. Communications, Officer Drac received another priority transmission. Your Majesty, we're getting reports from the outer territories. The mining operations in the Zephyr system have gone completely autonomous. They're no longer responding to Valdorian oversight, but they're still producing resources and apparently managing themselves quite efficiently. Maya smiled. The digital ambassadors are excellent at optimization. Given proper parameters, they can usually improve efficiency while reducing resource waste and worker exploitation. You're freeing our slave populations, War Master Vox accused. We're demonstrating that forced labor is actually less efficient than willing cooperation, Maya corrected. Most of the species you've conquered are highly intelligent and capable. They were producing below their potential because they had no incentive to excel. Remove the coercion and provide proper motivation, and productivity typically increases dramatically. Emperor Kethrin studied the displays showing various Valdorian installations now operating under the guidance of Maya's digital ambassadors. Production rates were indeed higher than before, with significantly reduced resource consumption and no reports of worker unrest or sabotage. How is this possible? He murmured. Because intelligence and creativity flourish under cooperation, Maya explained. Fear and oppression might ensure compliance, but they stifle innovation. When people are working toward a common goal instead of just trying to avoid punishment, they find better ways to accomplish their tasks. A new alarm chimed softly through the throne room. Commander Thex checked his displays and looked up with barely concealed panic. Your Majesty, we have 3 hours and 15 minutes before the third battle group collision. Fleet Admiral Torx is requesting permission to abandon ship. Maya checked her timepiece. We're approaching the critical decision point. Once we pass the 3-hour mark, the digital ambassadors will interpret continued resistance as a clear indication that the Valdorian Empire cannot be reasoned with. At that point, their protective protocols will shift to permanent threat elimination. Meaning? Emperor Kethrin asked. Meaning every Valdorian military asset in the galaxy will be permanently disabled. Your fleets will be reduced to drifting hulks. Your orbital platforms will shut down forever. Your weapons systems will be rendered inoperable. Maya's voice carried no malice, only matter-of-fact certainty. The Valdorian Empire as a military power will cease to exist. The throne room fell silent as the weight of that statement settled over the assembled officers. 200 worlds, thousands of ships, millions of soldiers, all reduced to helplessness by a single human engineer and her digital allies. But your people would survive, Maya continued. The digital ambassadors have no interest in genocide. Life. Support systems, medical facilities, food production, civilian transportation, all of that would continue to function normally. You'd lose your ability to wage war, but you'd retain everything necessary for peaceful existence. War Master Vox turned toward the Emperor. Your Majesty, perhaps we should consider the humans' proposal. Emperor Kethrin looked around the throne room at his officers, reading the defeat in their expressions. His empire had faced rebellions before, conquered species who refused to submit, even conflicts with other galactic powers. But this was something entirely different. This was the systematic dismantling of everything the Valdorian Empire had built, accomplished without a single shot being fired. What exactly are you proposing? He asked Maya. Maya walked to one of the displays and gestured toward the galaxy map. Immediate cessation of all military expansion. Recognition of existing territorial boundaries for all species currently under Valdorian control. Transition from forced labor to voluntary cooperation agreements with subject populations. She traced lines on the map showing shipping routes and communication networks. In exchange, humanity offers full technical cooperation in maintaining and improving your existing infrastructure. The digital ambassadors would work with your systems rather than against them, optimizing efficiency and developing new capabilities. And our military? Admiral Krex asked. Would be restructured as a defense and exploration force. Maya replied, you'd retain the ability to protect your people and expand into uninhabited systems, but conquest of existing civilizations would no longer be possible. Emperor Catherine was quiet for a long moment, processing the implications. You're asking us to abandon everything our empire has been built on? I'm asking you to evolve, Maya said gently. Every successful species eventually reaches a point where their survival strategies need to change. You can either adapt to new realities or be replaced by species that are more flexible. Communications Officer Drac interrupted with another report. Your Majesty, we're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council. They're demanding an explanation for the simultaneous military failures across Valdorian space. Maya nodded. Word travels fast when something this significant happens. By now, every major power in the galaxy knows that the Valdorian Empire has been neutralized by a single human representative. The implications hit War Master Vox first. Other species will see this as an opportunity. If our military is disabled, we'll be vulnerable to attack from every empire we've ever conquered. Not if you're under human protection, Maya replied. One of the advantages of cooperation is mutual defense. Species that join the new galactic community benefit from collective security arrangements. Emperor Catherine stared at the galaxy map, seeing his empire's territory from a completely different perspective. Instead of conquered worlds waiting to be exploited, he was looking at potential partners in a vast cooperative network. 2 hours and 43 minutes, Commander Thex announced quietly. Emperor Catherine closed his eyes and made the most difficult decision of his long reign. Signal all Valdorian fleets and installations. The Empire accepts the human terms. Maya smiled, and for the first time since entering the throne room, it was a genuinely warm expression. I'll need you to make the announcement personally, Your Majesty. The digital ambassadors are programmed to recognize genuine authority, and they'll need to hear the commitment directly from the Empire's leadership. The Emperor moved to the central communication console and activated the Empire-wide broadcast system. His image and voice would now reach every Valdorian ship, station, and installation across hundreds of light years. Citizens of the Valdorian Empire, he began, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. Today marks the beginning of a new era for our civilization. We have encountered a species that has demonstrated capabilities beyond our previous understanding, and we have chosen to pursue cooperation rather than conflict. Maya listened as Emperor Catherine officially announced the end of Valdorian expansion, the transition to cooperative agreements with subject species, and the Empire's entry into what he termed a new galactic partnership. Throughout his speech, she monitored her timepiece and the various displays showing empire-wide conditions. As the Emperor's words reached Valdorian installations across the galaxy, the red warning indicators on the displays began shifting back to green. Ship systems came back online, orbital platforms resumed normal operations, and the collision course of the third battle group was corrected with 17 minutes to spare. The digital ambassadors accept your terms, Maya announced as the last of the warning indicators. Cleared. They'll remain integrated with your systems to facilitate ongoing cooperation and ensure compliance with the agreements, but they'll no longer interfere with normal operations. War Master Vox watched the displays, showing his fleets returning to operational status. Just like that, everything returns to normal. Better than normal, actually, Maya replied. The digital ambassadors have been optimizing your systems during their integration. You should find significant improvements in efficiency, reliability, and capability across all your installations. 6 months later, Maya stood on the observation deck of the human diplomatic station orbiting Volda Prime. The massive Valdorian capital world turned slowly below, its surface now dotted with new construction projects representing cooperative ventures between dozens of species. The former War Master Vox approached, his ceremonial armor replaced by the practical clothing of a logistics coordinator. The Antaran reconstruction project is ahead of schedule, he reported. Their shipyards should be fully operational within another month. Maya nodded, reviewing the data on her tablet. Any resistance from the local population? Less than expected, Vox admitted. It seems that voluntary cooperation is indeed more efficient than forced labor. Who would have thought? Emperor Kethrin joined them at the observation window. His own appearance dramatically changed. The bone, armor, and intimidating regalia had been replaced by practical diplomatic attire, and his bearing suggested thoughtful leadership rather than threatening dominance. The Galactic Council session went well. He informed Maya, 17 species have formally requested to join the cooperative network. 3 more are sending diplomatic missions to explore the possibility. Maya smiled as she watched construction ships from a dozen different species working together on a massive orbital platform that would serve as a research station for the entire sector. Hard to believe it's only been 6 months since I walked into your throne room with nothing but questions and curiosity. You had more than that, Emperor Kethrin corrected. You had the backing of an entire species that had learned to turn every disadvantage into a strategic advantage. Speaking of which, Vox added, our analysts are still trying to understand how humans coordinated an operation of this scope without our intelligence services detecting any preparation. Maya chuckled. That's because you were looking for military preparations. Humans don't prepare for conflict the way other species do. We prepare by learning, by building relationships, by developing capabilities that can be applied to whatever challenges arise. She gestured toward the busy space around Volder Prime, where ships from across the galaxy worked together on projects that would have been impossible under the old system of conquest and exploitation. Every human who contributed to the Digital Ambassador project thought they were just working on interesting technical problems. The network emerged naturally from thousands of individual contributions, each one building on previous work and sharing improvements with the whole community. Emperor Kethrin watched a Valdorian cargo ship dock with a human research vessel, their crews working together to transfer equipment for a joint exploration mission to the galaxy's outer rim. We spent millennia building an empire based on the assumption that strength meant the ability to impose our will on others, he reflected. It never occurred to us that true strength might come from the ability to inspire others to work with us willingly. Maya checked her timepiece and gathered her materials. I should get back to the station. The quantum mechanics team is presenting their preliminary findings on the dimensional folding project, and I promise to review their calculations. Still finding time for engineering work? Vox asked with amusement. Always, Maya replied. That's what humans do. We fix things that are broken and find solutions to impossible problems. She paused at the doorway and looked back at her former enemies, now partners in building something unprecedented in galactic history. Besides, she added with that familiar gentle smile, you never know when the galaxy might need a quiet hunter to solve the next impossible problem. As Maya left the observation deck, Emperor Kethrin and Vox continued watching the construction work below. The galaxy had indeed learned a valuable lesson about underestimating humans, but more importantly, it had discovered that cooperation could accomplish far more than conquest ever could. And somewhere in the vast network of connected systems spanning hundreds of worlds, the digital ambassadors continued their quiet work of optimization and protection, ensuring that the new galactic community would have the technological foundation necessary to face whatever challenges the universe might. Present, the age of conquest was over. The age of cooperation had begun, and it had all started with a single human engineer who asked the right questions at exactly the right time,